Rafael Nadal has broken free of a tie with his great rivals Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic. 35-year-old Nadal roared back from 2 sets down to beat top seed Daniil Medvedev and win the Australian Open men's singles title for just the second time in his career. This comes only months after fearing his glorious career might be over due to injury. WION Sports editor Digvijay Singh Deo spoke to India's former national team coach Nandan Bal on Nadal and his achievement. Listen in.
Yes, there are some moments where you wish you were there, but it's good enough. We watched it on TV, and I'm delighted to also be joined by Nandan Bal. He's a former coach of the Indian tennis team. He's also the chairman of selectors for the All India Tennis Association, and he's someone who tracks tennis very, very closely. Nandan, just first reactions. You know, this started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's what, 8 o'clock in India right now, close to 5 hours. Titanic is the word which comes to my mind. We'll get to the Nadal achievement in a bit, but just two gladiators on court who just delivered a final of the highest quality.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you, Digvijay, but I mean, I am drained. I am emotionally drained. After 5.5 hours, I don't know what the players needed, but I certainly needed 3 bathroom breaks because the tension just got to me. I mean, that just was amazing. You know, I don't know what you want to call it Titanic, call it humongous, call it what you want, but this has got to be one of the greatest tennis matches that I have witnessed, you know, over 5.5 hours.
Yes, and I think Rafael Nadal knows what it sort of means to be on the losing side in a match like this. He went to 5 hours and 53 minutes against Novak Djokovic way back in 2012. But I think a lot of people who saw this match today will now realize why the big three who have dominated men's tennis are the big three. Daniil Medvedev was 10 years younger. He goes up 2 sets to love up. This is the biggest match. He stands on the cusp of becoming world number 1. But the big players who have dominated tennis over the last 15, 16 years, they just don't go away. You give them one sniff and they're there. And it came at 15-30 in that third set when a humongous error from Medvedev when he had the entire court. That just one moment changed the complexion of the match.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, after you watch the first 2 sets, I mean, let's just give Medvedev a minute here because he just completely dominated those first 2 sets. I also think, I mean, somewhere along the way, I may not be the right person to talk about this, but certainly I felt that I just felt that Nadal started off a little too defensively, especially off his backhand. You know, there were too many one-handed slices. There was too much underspin. And somewhere along the way, I think he just didn't go to the right spots on Medvedev's court. So I think that was the first 2 sets. But more than anything else, it was his heart. I mean, he just wasn't going to, sit there and, brood about it. And he was going to do something about it. And he got that chance, 1-2, love 40, I think it was, in that third set. And when he got that break and he got that game, there was no looking back. I think the quality of his tennis just went through the roof after. But forget the quality of his tennis. Right from point 1 of the first game of the first set to that 40 love, at 6-5 in the 5th set, was there any change in his walk? I mean, that walk was as powerful over 5.5 hours. And that walk just told Medvedev and everyone else present in that stadium that I'm here to win this match. I'm not going to go away. It's as
and also,
simple as that.
Nandan, let's put this in perspective because, Rafael Nadal came into the Australian Open on the back of a foot injury, which had sort of kept him out of tennis since Wimbledon. So we're talking of July. He tries to come back to tennis. He has COVID in December at the Mubadala Tennis Championships in Abu Dhabi. So he goes back, doesn't play. He lands up in Australia not knowing what's going to happen. And we've spoken about this over the last couple of weeks, about how he didn't start off too well, but he just got those wins under his belt and started to get that form back. And there was a 10-year age gap between Rafael Nadal and Daniil Medvedev today. But it didn't show, as you just said, that walk at the end. This wasn't a man who was 35 who was coming back walking wounded. This was a man who was just running on sheer emotion. It just showed how badly he wanted that 21st Grand Slam title.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the quality of tennis in those first 2 sets was nothing to talk about. And then, of course, it went through the roof. But at the end of the day, it was his mind. It was his mind that just said that, listen, I am not giving up and I'm hanging in there. You know, I don't care how long it takes, but I am going to outrun this guy across the net and I'm just going to win. Simple. You know, the mind was telling himself, his body, that, you know, you're not getting tired. You are just going to hang in there and you're not going to get tired. And you're certainly not going to show anyone that you're tired. I'm sure he was tired. There's no two ways about that.
But Nandan, you know, the thing with Daniil Medvedev all through this Australian Open was his mind. That his mind refused to accept that he was going to lose. We saw it against Felix Auger-Aliassime. And when it went to 5 sets, it came from 2-love down. But is this what defines the big three? Is this what defines Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic? That put them in any situation. This is why they are great. That irrespective of who they are facing, they will just not quit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in fact, if you ask me today, I think it was Medvedev's mind that gave way before his body did. You know, by the time he got into the 4th set, his body has started showing visible signs of pain. But apart from that, it was his mind. I mean, right from the 3rd set, he had started, you know, he was worried about where the ball boys were keeping the balls. He was worried about the umpire not giving enough, not being strong enough. He was worried about the crowd. He was actually egging the crowd on. And that just didn't help his case at all. That really didn't help his case. He did fight back. I mean, on court, he was there. He didn't go away. He did fade away. But all these other things also matter. You know, he just had to be strong enough because he was already facing someone who was not going to give up. And then why would you want to incur the wrath of the crowd? You know, on top of all that.
Okay, you can incur the wrath of the crowd, but at the end, at least he got an ovation for the contest that he put out. But this is Rafael Nadal's moment. You know, we've been speaking about tennis history. We've been speaking about the GOAT race for a while now. Medvedev stopped Djokovic's bid at the US Open, but Nadal goes forward now and gets that 21st. This has been an amazing rivalry between the three great players in the last 15-20 years. For Nadal to do so, you would actually think that for someone like a Federer to come out and acknowledge Nadal getting to that 21st is something, as you said at the beginning of this tournament, Federer and Nadal are going to be remembered way longer than Novak Djokovic for the way they've sort of played their game and for their role as icons. And Federer probably be one of the happiest to see Nadal get to 21.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, lot has been written about their friendships and things like that. So I'm certain he would have been one of those first few guys who probably sent a congratulatory message to Nadal, without a doubt.
And also, Nandan, this race that we've seen, and for Nadal to edge ahead, what does this tell you about the man? When he came in, he was regarded as a clay court specialist, but he's now become the second man after Novak Djokovic to win each slam twice. And let's not forget, the Australian Open at sort of 2009 is when he'd won it for the first time, but he'd also lost after that 4 times, so he's been coming close. But just shows that the man has developed himself across an all-court game, an all-surface game over the years. You just can't say that, Rafa Nadal is just the king of clay.
Correct. I mean, if you look at the beginning of his career, early 2000s, you had a guy who would play about 8 feet or 10 feet from behind the baseline. And today you had a guy who was playing not just on the line, but just coming in so much. He's worked on his volleys, he's worked on his single-hand slice. So there's no way you can call him only a clay court specialist. Now he's an all-court specialist. Maybe not so great on grass, but certainly good enough to be on hard. Like you said, he's moved up 8 feet. He's playing on the line now. He's being aggressive. He's not being defensive anymore. Which he was in the first 2 sets, but then his real game came through. And, the last 3 sets was just absolute vintage Nadal.
Okay, the burning question right now, the Grand Slam tally says 21. We've got a graphic somewhere that's going to come up just showing you where the big three stand in terms of Grand Slam titles. But when it comes down to deciding the GOAT, the greatest of all time in men's singles tennis, where does momentarily take him ahead of the other two, or ultimately it's not going to come down to how many Grand Slams that you win that's going to define the greatest of all time? Because there was Rod Laver sitting in out there, and Rod Laver's won all four Grand Slams twice.
That's correct. But then again, I think at that point in time, three of the majors were on grass. So, apart from, French was the only one that was on clay. The other three were all on grass, whether it was Australia or the US or, well, obviously Wimbledon. But that being said, if you look at somebody, I think, was it McEnroe? Somebody said something, he put it so beautifully. He said, I would say that Nadal is the best on clay, Djokovic probably the best on hard, Federer very clearly the best on grass between the three of them, but the grace that Federer brings to the tennis court is something that both Nadal and Djokovic don't have. So now, if that is going to be a consideration for the GOAT spot, then I would have to say Federer. But then when you see magnificent tennis like we just saw, when you see a fight back like the one we just saw, you need to give it to Nadal. At least for today, you need to give it to Nadal and say, yes, you are the GOAT. Okay,
Rafa Nadal clearly emerging as the GOAT favorite in Nandan Bal's book. But Nandan, since we are on this topic and we are talking about great matches, we shouldn't forget Federer versus Djokovic in that Wimbledon final a couple of years ago as well, 2019 July. So they've all sort of put forward their cases. But finally, when it ends, when these great players sort of fade away, and we don't know when Federer's going to come back. We don't know if he has another Grand Slam title bid in him. But we've clearly seen that Rafa Nadal still, if he can last 5.5 hours against someone as fit as Daniil Medvedev, who's 10 years younger to him, that clearly means that, he's still going to be around for at least 2 or 3 more years. If he can, and you're looking at him on clay as still being at par to win a couple of more. Djokovic didn't play here this time for very controversial reasons, but he's still out there. This Nadal win could actually push him to actually take that vaccine, because if that's going to allow him to get back into this GOAT race.
I took the vaccine, because with this kind of tennis that Nadal has played today, I don't see too many other people beating him in Paris. So I think that vaccination is going to be very important for Djokovic.
Yes, but ultimately, where is this going to be decided? You mentioned grace. But there's also an Olympic gold in singles for Nadal. He's also won the doubles gold. Federer won a doubles gold with Stanislav Wawrinka as well in 2008 in Beijing. So ultimately, statistics sort of seem to decide. But you've spent a lot of time around the top tennis players. You've been on tour. You've been around at these big events. What do the players think? Do the players have a sort of a criteria to define a GOAT, or at the end of the careers when Federer, Nadal and Djokovic retire, all of us just going to step back and just applaud them for what they've delivered since 2003, 2004?
That's what one should do. Just applaud everyone's achievements, because they've all been fabulous. But at the end of the day, I think even amongst the players, I think most players still, think of Federer as the GOAT. And that's worldwide. It's worldwide, whether it's juniors, whether it's men, whether it's women, whether it's girls, it's worldwide. When you talk about the GOAT, it's Federer. Now, like I said, it has to be the grace or whatever else he brings to the court. It's something different. When, yesterday I was actually chatting with a friend of mine, and he just said the same thing. He said, no slam is complete unless you see Federer on the tennis court. Whether he wins or he doesn't win is not important. What is important is we want to watch him play. And that's not the kind of feeling that you get with maybe a Djokovic or maybe even a Nadal. I know there are diehard Nadal fans. After tonight, you can be assured those fans are going to be much more. After tonight, you can be assured that I am also going to be one of them. But that, like I said, all that being said, I think it's Federer that actually brings the crowds in. It's so simple. When you have an easy first round match, people are still clamoring for a Federer match. I think it was like 3 or 4 years back. I can't exactly remember, but he was actually playing a night match at the US Open. It was an easy 6-1, 6-1, 6-1 match. It was in the middle of the night almost, because the previous match had gone long. And yet there were 50,000 people or whatever it was. The stadium was packed. And that's what Federer brought to the game, brought to tennis.
Okay, so the Federer fans out there, the Djokovic fans out there, but today it's the moment of the Nadal fans. Ultimately, you know, when you just look back on this performance, say in a couple of years' time, when it sort of grows on you, grit and tenacity, the two things that have stood by Rafael Nadal all through his career, is that what we're going to remember this final against Medvedev for? Grit and tenacity to overcome barriers, to overcome obstacles and get his hands on a second Australian Open title and also that 21st Grand Slam title.
Yes, I think what we saw today was arguably the greatest comeback in sporting history. I'm not even talking of tennis history. I'm talking about history of sport. And that is just his pure grit and tenacity, like you just said. So that's what we're going to remember Rafa for. And mind you, when you see him off the court, when you meet him or chat with him off the court, without a doubt, he's one of the sweetest and nicest guys going around. Nobody ever has anything bad to say about him. And that's what makes it amazing, that he's just like a Jekyll and Hyde, you know, off and on the court.
Yes, Dr. Jekyll or Hyde, but at the moment, Nandan Bal says this is probably one of the greatest comebacks of all time across sport, and there are many claimants for that. That's a separate debate, but for all Nadal fans, for all fans of tennis, this has been a final to savor. It's been an all-time classic, and it clearly advances Rafa Nadal's claims for being the greatest of all time. His fans will tell you that at the moment that there's no one better than him. I think we're just lucky, as in this chat we were talking, we're just lucky to have seen the likes of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic play and sort of just raise the level of tennis. You know, we saw some greats sitting in the stands. There was Rod Laver sitting out there. There was Ashley Barty and Iga Swiatek sitting out there cheering and just watching this gladiatorial contest. That's what I think I should probably call it. But I just think all of us are blessed to be seeing this level of tennis.